We are live, and today we have a very special guest. So, expat, South African staying in the UK. That's like an ex-expat because it's a colonist who then became an expat, and then who lives in Bournemouth. Now, what most people don't know, and I told Carolyn the story, and the good news is I don't have a restaurant, so I can tell the story without losing any business. But I trained. Well, I was on my gap year in the UK in 2003, and I worked at a restaurant in Bournemouth called Manfred's. It's more like a pub. It's at the top of the hill at the Belvedere Hotel. Now, it's safe to tell the story because I'm not there anymore. But I signed in the fish once, a fish order, and I packed the fresh fish on top of the old fish, which in like chef training is fail 101. And in South African slang, that's fail, like dirty 101 as well. So it was terrible. And then we ended up having that fish for 1 or 2 days, and then we sold out on fish the one night. And the next morning, I came back to work and found out that someone had been removed from the hospital in the middle of the night with food poisoning. And the chef asked me what happened. And I said, well, I served all the fish. And he said, that's nonsense. We got fresh fish in yesterday. Like whoever's accusing the kitchen of causing this food poisoning is talking rubbish. So I never owned up to it. And to this day, the people at Belvedere Hotel still think that we serve very fresh fish to everyone and that person faked food poisoning. But the reason that story is important is because Carolyn Freeman is here to join us, and she lives in Bournemouth. She's like the first person I've spoken to who lives in Bournemouth since that incident 20 years ago. And Carolyn's here to talk to us about the emotional eating online short course at Real Meal Revolution. Carolyn is a cyber psychologist. So this is not just any person who did the course and thought it was great. She's trained in the dark arts of psychology and speaks with the professional wisdom that comes with that. Carolyn, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Jonno. No pressure here.
So what led you to, what made you interested in taking an emotional eating course? Because you understand psychology. What's that about?
It's kind of going back to that Dr. Heal Yourself thing. Yeah. Because sometimes, especially as a psychologist, we look at everyone else's stuff and analyze that, and we kind of often forget to look at our own selves. And even though we go for standard psychology and therapy and all that stuff, it's easy to keep some boxes closed. And then, so for me, this was really about understanding a little bit more about an area that I'm not expert in at all. And that's kind of what piqued my interest in this. That kind of really sounded quite interesting when I first heard about it.
And have you had a history of dieting? What's your yo-yo look like? Yeah.
Well, it's kind of persistent trying to diet. And I think I've spent the last 40 years just doing one, trying to diet after another, and there's always another thing, and this thing will work, but that thing will work. No, this didn't work, so this should work. And they never lasted longer than 2 weeks before I just fall completely off the wagon. So right. Yeah, it's just a history of trying desperately to lose excess weight and seeing myself as just being fat and heavy on the scales, and just typical chick kind of mindset, I think. Maybe South African chick mindset as well.
Yeah, well, I think, look, it's also men mindset. Do you know that it's a fun stat that 60% of the people who are obese in the world are men, and 80% of the weight loss market is women. So there are a lot of men out there who are overweight who are just not talking about it. They're like, I don't ask for directions. So I'm not going in.
Know that.
It like blows my mind. So you had a long sort of yo-yo dieting experience, but surely you would have heard about banting, being a Sappho, living in England, and even learning banting, you still struggled to stick to it.
Well, actually, I left way before banting was a thing. Well, I'd never heard about it prior to leaving back in 2001. So it was never really an option. It was just South Africa, you just eat a certain way. You come to England, you just carry on eating. So no, I'd never heard of it, and it just never occurred to me.
Okay, and then you heard about Real Meal through, you were saying earlier, through various different channels, and accidentally you bought the book and never read it, and then you landed on our website.
Yeah, bought the book, never read it. It came as a recommendation actually from a friend of mine who's a chef, and I put the book aside because it kind of felt like another one of those hard work, too complicated things. Rather than a diet, it was just a recipe book for me in my head. And then I kind of stumbled across a number of different things and pretty much circled back to Real Meal Revolution, and then started reading the book and going, there might be something in this. And I think I kind of needed some element of historical convincing that carbs were not good, and sugar kind of knew was not good, but carbs were still in my, this is a safe zone, these are good foods, they're healthy foods, until relatively recently. I'd say relatively a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay. Now, you did the emotional eating course.
Yep.
For those of you watching, it's a 6-week online course. It's run by our psychologist, Victoria Webster, who's also a legend. And as a psychologist, how did you feel going in? Were you critical, wary?
Wary, maybe. Wary,
yeah.
No. I think going into it, I kind of always had a naturally curious mind, and for me going into this was just really to find out some hints and tips, because I kind of thought I knew quite a bit about addiction and eating and stuff, but clearly I didn't. And going into it, as I said, I thought I'd just pick up a few hints and tips, and I thought I'd hold back, because being a psychologist, it's tricky to be on a course where another psychologist is running, and I didn't want to step on any toes. So I kind of held back and thought, no, I'm in control. I know what I'm doing, just listening in. And then, I started going through the course material, and just blew me away, actually.
Really? What are some of the things that really impressed you?
I think, firstly, the way Victoria presented was just so helpful is the wrong word. It's kind of so informative, and it just made sense. It was simple, it was easy to understand, and the videos as well as the toolkits, or combined with the toolkits, were really effective for me. I just never give myself any time and headspace to sit down and think things through for myself. So being forced through the work that needed to be done during the evenings and weeks up to running up to live sessions, it really made me sit down and think. And that really for me was transformative, of just having this tool that I could, and things to think about, and then trying to find a way to match up what Victoria was talking about, what was happening in the workbook, and my life. And I think the key things for me was around boundary blurring. Setting boundaries and actually blurring those boundaries. And the other really big thing for me, which really triggered everything else, was when she was talking about childhood perceptions of and reading into circumstances during childhood, and how that influenced your worldview. And it really made me sit down and think back to my childhood and how I saw food and how I related food to incidences in childhood. And none of them were epically bad. It was just about how I read the situation. And for the first time ever, I kind of realized I was seeing food, and particularly sweet food, in a very particular way, as a way of self-soothing. And things tied up which I'd never seen before, and fits together. This is why I do this, and that's why I do that. And it made sense. It just made sense. So she made me challenge. She made me think why, which I'd never done.
Yeah, amazing. The why element seems to be what really I think leaves people feeling much more empowered, because they kind of, okay, at least if you understand why, you can tackle it better. What's changed for you since you got that understanding, or had some of those things unveiled for you?
Well, prior to starting the course, I think one of the key things I said right up front is I want to understand why I trough so much sugar when I get stressed and anxious. It was my opening gambit. And what I realized was it was about childhood illness, of when we were sick or felt ill, we got ice cream and jelly to make us feel better. So for me, the stress and anxiety and the tension in my stomach was a similar feeling to having a tummy ailment. So therefore, to self-soothe, I would just trough loads of sugar because that's where the association was. So for me, understanding that why meant that actually I can pull back and go, actually, I don't need that. I don't need to self-soothe with sugar. I don't need to feed that element of myself, and I just need to find something else. And once I understood that why, I now no longer do midnight or kind of after dinner runs to the local Tesco, or mid-afternoon, oh, I'm so stressed, I need something to compensate and help me calm down, and I'd go buy 3 bags of fruit pastels and just trough them within an hour, which was ridiculous. But that was me trying to just calm myself down, because that's how I was calmed down in childhood, or made to feel better in childhood. So I don't do that anymore. Now I might have a sugar-free jelly, and I have some in the fridge that I now go, okay, I can do sugar-free jelly. I don't have to do 3 packets of fruit pastels. And it's
sugar-free jelly, isn't that basically just gelatine? So it's almost like protein. It's gelatin and sweetness. Is it a bright color?
I'm going with that.
Yeah. Is it a bright color?
Yep. But that's okay, because it's not 3 packs of fruit pastels.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Bank the wins when you can. I think that's the one, actually. That's amazing. Yeah, we don't get sugar-free jelly here yet, but I promise you, when we do, I think it's gonna take off.
My favorite thing at the moment.
Okay, so that was one of the things. Was there anything else about? So it looks like you also really appreciated the structure, because the structure, with the combination of the live workshops, the WhatsApp support. I don't know whether or not you participated. A lot of people, that freaks them out. They're like, if I'm in another WhatsApp group, I will die. And then obviously the pre-recorded lectures, and then that whole piece on understanding your, why you eat. There was something else about the triggers. What did you discover any triggers that you had that led you to eat, or was yours purely around this sugar binging thing?
It was around the sugar binging, but there was one other trigger which I found out doing the next course, which was the short keto. And I always knew that one of the things that stopped or triggered me in other diets was about the calorie counting and the control side of diets. And I thought I'd be fine on the perfect keto, but kind of doing the macros triggered me, and I just fell off the wagon again. So for me, that element of control was around me trying to control my eating, but actually not having any control. So it's just a little bit psychologically messed up. But I know now that I've got to kind of figure out how to work through that trigger around control and food. And there's nothing historical from childhood other than you will eat your food and finish it before you leave the table. Kind of South African mentality that was 1980s.
Is that only South African? I can't believe that's only South African. That just feels like the whole world gets told they're not getting pudding unless they finish their meal. You mean they don't do that everywhere else?
Well, I haven't heard that much in England. Well, maybe because I haven't been around a lot of people with lots of children. Well, say lots of children in general. But those who I have been around with don't do that with, or haven't done that with their children. That they've kind of said, well, eat what you want to, and then that's fine. So for me, that's a South African thing. I'm sure it is in other countries too, but I did get the starving children in Africa thing, and you will eat your Brussels sprouts before you leave this table. Otherwise, no TV for you.
Yeah, so, I'm not hungry, but there's starving children in Africa. Like, I get it. But
if I had the guts to, I probably would have said, well, you can send it to them, because I don't want it. But no way would I have.
It's crazy, this stuff. But and also the total paradox with, like, your child's really, you don't want them eating junk, so you make them stuff themselves as much as they can before they go and eat more junk. And you know that there's an extra, like a dessert stomach. There's like a dessert stomach and a sushi stomach, and they are separate from like the normal stomachs.
Yeah, I don't have a sushi stomach. I was born with one. Yeah, no.
But that's because you left Cape Town before sushi really exploded. But there's many sushi stomachs in Cape Town. So okay, so this is a fascinating topic, and it's one that I love as well, because people come to Real Meal to learn how to do keto, and then we actually tell them, the process. Usually, you try the app, and then you do the course, and then we promote the emotional eating side, because that's really where you learn why you don't stick to a diet. But a lot of people come out of that program and they're like, you should never do any diet ever again. And so there's this massive paradox, because obviously we want people to be healthier, we want them to reverse diabetes. And in order to do that, you've got to track your meals to learn like how to keep your carbohydrates low. But then there's this whole thing that, you know, there's no good or bad food, which is what we look at in the emotional eating thing. It's just food, and food's there to nourish your body. So you end up doing the same thing, but for totally different reasons. Can you talk about that and your experience of that? So you mentioned the paradox. Maybe talk about how frustrating and difficult it is to get your head around it as well, if so.
I think because for me, doing the emotional eating first was useful, because when I did the short perfect keto course, it helped me to understand why I spiraled. Which means, and then I've gone back to the emotional eating side. So I've parked all the kind of following keto strictly side of things, because there's stuff I still need to sort out. And for me, is the perfect keto has helped me understand the process of eating healthy foods and doing all those, the greens, oranges, and not the reds, and how it's all fits together. So, and although I did a couple of weeks where I was quite strict with it, and after that, I think, I can't remember who talks about it, whether it's you or Bridget talks about, well, actually, later on, once you've done you've stuck to it strictly, then you kind of figure out or you adapt it, and you then become less of or you become more of an expert in it. So therefore, then you build your own element of it. Yeah, if I remember it correctly. So for me, doing the emotional eating thing and going back to emotional eating and going back to the keto is about then choosing the way of doing that keto that fits for me and the way that I see food psychologically, and how I can then do dieting in terms of the keto dieting. So it's not so stringent a process as the perfect keto course is. I'm not sure if this answered your question or if I've just rambled around in circles.
Well, it's quite a confusing topic. I think what you've given is an explanation of how you're approaching it, which is kind of, that's what I was asking. It's like this. So that experience where you said you felt triggered by tracking. It's everyone has that, because you come out of emotional eating and you've learned that it's not supposed to be that way. And then it's instantly triggering. It's fascinating. So now, how is your experience of food, your relationship with food, and your healthy eating? I don't know what to call it now, because we don't want to say diet, like that's a dirty word. I don't want to say regime, because that's French for diet anyway. Or it's French for regime, I guess. But what is your approach? That's the word. What's your approach now to healthy eating?
I think it's about making food. I'm trying to think of this. Sorry, that's why I'm kind of going. Food has become permissible. It's no longer a dark horse, and something that has to be that you have to be worried about. It's about making sure that you're eating the right foods for your body and approaching it in a way that actually, well, what are you eating for? Are you eating to satisfy a craving, a hunger, an emotional episode, or are you eating to be good to your body and be good to self? So all food has become permissive, but what food is good for you and what food actually works for you, and works for your body, and how are you going to do it in a way that actually makes sense for you? So it's rewriting the rules, if there are any rules for eating food. It's rewriting those in a way that's about food is no longer the enemy. It's now about a friend who can help you, and it's no longer a support. It's no longer a crutch that helps you to get over your emotional stuff. It's about a lifestyle that actually you can engage with and helps to, can't think of the right word, but almost adds to life rather than as a crutch for life.
I mean, you had me at food as a friend who can help you. I'm like, still just sitting with that for a while. That is amazing. Food is, what did you say? Food is not the enemy. It is a friend who can help you. That anyone who's watching that, write that down now. Tattoo it on your wrist. That is the key, like right there. It really is so great. Okay, and then like, so I'm trying to put it all into that context. So if food is a friend who can help you, you just don't want to. You want to have clear boundaries with that friend, because if the lines get blurred, then it could creep in.
And that kind of goes back to something that what Victoria's talking about is setting boundaries for friends and family. It's also important to set boundaries for food. And actually, you food are encroaching on a boundary that I no longer feel comfortable with. And this isn't working for me anymore, so you must go away. So if sugar's not working for you, then set a boundary for it.
Yeah, so it's kind of setting a boundary for yourself.
Yeah. Can
you share an example of a boundary that you set for yourself around food or sugar on the course?
Not consciously. I think probably subconsciously. Oh, yes. I did actually. Now I think about it, I did consciously do it. One of the realizations I had was whenever we went on a long trip as a family, putt course was always part of the process of mum packed sandwiches and crisps and things to have on the journey, because that's what you do with 4 children in the car. So for me, a long journey equaled eating and drinking while you're driving. So whenever I went on a business trip, I'd stop off to fill up with petrol and buy a whole bunch of stuff to eat on the journey. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I never realized it. I thought that I was just I ate because I was bored, but it wasn't. It was because it was habitually ingrained into me that you're going to journey and you eat food. So I now stop myself from doing that. If I fill up in the car, I might get a bottle of water and then just say, you don't need the food for the journey. And that's it. And I get to the end of the journey and go, no, you didn't need that food. You really didn't. And you're not bored. It's just you're eating out of habit. So yeah, that is one thing that I've kind of stopped and gone, no more. No.
That's I can totally relate to that. The N2 drives from Cape Town to Durbs, and every time we go up to the Eastern Cape, we drive the southern coast, and there's like amazing pie bakeries, farm stalls on the road, and it's like if you go to Stellenbosch, you do the wine route, and if you drive the garden route, it's basically like the pie greatest hits of South Africa there. And so for many years we used to do the pie tasting. So you do the Springbok pie at Peregrine, and then there's like an amazing chicken pie at Hohook, and then a few farm stalls later there's oatmeal and Refusson, and literally I know like which part that's where you want to get the Bobotie pie. It just goes all the way. Anyway, that's probably TMI, but so okay, that is amazing. Now you are obviously super advanced and in touch with your emotions. I'm just saying that, like, as every accountant's got their finances under control. Yeah. And you've done the emotional eating online short course with Victoria. She's watching, by the way. She says, "Well done, Karen." You can see that on the screen. Victoria. And so, who do you think would benefit from the emotional eating online short course?
I think for those who have been trying to diet or trying to kind of lose weight and can't figure out why they keep on failing, or have binging sessions, or whatever that binge is, these are the kind of things that we really struggle to get over on our own. And I think those types of people, this is the right course for them, because it helps, or it helped me to discover what those whys are. And if you can't figure it out yourself, and you are struggling to actually move forward, then you need to do this before you do anything else, any other diet, any other eating program, even other RMR programs. I would say this you really need to do before you do anything else, because it's more likely that this will help you get over that hurdle than anything else.
Yeah. Wow. That's super cool. Well, thank you very much for saying that. Now, at this point in most interviews, I would say thanks so much for joining me. I wish you all the best, and long may it continue. But I have to take advantage, because you're a cyber psychologist, and no one actually even knows what that means. Well, I didn't, and I kind of think I know a few things about like what's happening in mental health as like a complete hobbyist. But I read a bit about your CV and your background, and what you are studying is incredible. So could you just give everyone who's watching a light introduction to what cyber psychology is? And then I've got some very important questions to ask you.
So cyber psychology is basically the understanding of human behavior around technology and how we use technology, and how it then impacts us. So a number of cyber psychologists look at social media and how that's changing us as individuals and our self-esteem, our mental wellness and all that stuff. Others look at cybersecurity and cyber forensics, which is around understanding why people click on scam emails and what impacts all that has. They also advise governments and businesses around policies that they should make around cybersecurity. And then others look at virtual reality and the metaverse and how that's impacting us as individuals as well as in corporations and there also a whole bunch of others look at gaming and kind of gaming addictions, but they don't like to use the word addictions because there's all the research doesn't really point to it being an addiction. It's more about coping mechanisms or escapism or lots of other things. And there are a lot of benefits to gaming, but there is also a lot of downsides, which the media tells us a lot about. So my area of expertise is around organizational cyber psychology, which is how we as knowledge workers use technology, specifically workplace technology, and how it impacts us, especially when we use it in the evenings and weekends, whether that's a mobile phone or laptop or even just thinking about work after hours.
What's a knowledge worker?
It's someone who uses their brain to create assets for a company or their own individual enterprise. So it's
like writer, designer, researcher, okay.
Chef who just writes recipe books, and accountants and architects and marketers and salespeople and psychologists. It's anyone who uses their brain to create assets and doesn't use their hands really to create specific products as such.
Are there any jobs these days that aren't knowledge working? Like, I'm trying to think.
It's kind of blue collar workers, people who work in factories or on the roads and do services. And athletes. Yeah. So it's people who work in offices and use technology for their day-to-day work, basically.
Okay. And then, so you spoke about how technology increases their level of anxiety, and I'm sure the first thing that comes up is distraction or loss of focus. Yeah.
There's been quite a lot of research around this, and for those of us who grew up in analog and used to read loads and loads of books and played lots of games outside, we remember reading books like from front to back cover. And now you talk to someone who's spent a lot of time with technology and looking at social media, and they struggle to read 2 or 3 paragraphs. And we've all noticed that we are not able to focus as much as we used to. And that really is down to how much technology we use, and specifically around social media. So
is there proven causation? Are there proven causation there?
Yeah, because we get distracted every 6 seconds by, if you look at Facebook posts, there's a new something every 6 seconds. And our brain is so used to seeing that we've created these neurological pathways that don't allow us to focus and concentrate anymore. And every time we get distracted by a notification, which we look at on average within 30 seconds of it appearing on our phone, it takes 5 to 15 minutes for us to refocus back on the task that we were originally doing, because we just lose that train of thought and it takes ages to pull it back again and kind of focus. So as knowledge workers, we can start a project at the beginning of the day and get distracted so often that by the end of the day, we've done nothing. So we can't do deep work anymore. We just struggle to focus. And even when we've got a big project coming up, we distract ourselves because we're so used to being distracted that our brains can't cope, or we struggle with the amount of energy it takes to do thinking and do deep thinking.
Is it possible to reverse that?
Yes.
Like in a teenager who's been TV'd, can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a similar question to, can you help someone to get fit again?
Okay. Yeah.
It's through practice. It's through stepping away from technology, really. My advice to a lot of knowledge workers is keep social media and emails to 3 blocks in a day. So first thing in the morning, lunchtime, and last thing before you shut your computer down, and then switch them off. Just all notifications, just switch them off. You don't need to know. You don't
think starting the day with social media is kind of like tempting yourself? It's like a shooter at breakfast.
Well, what it does is it kind of clears your mind of actually there's nothing there. I've answered everything. Otherwise you spend the morning thinking, oh, I wonder how many notifications I got on that post, or I wonder what else there is. I wonder what else was going on. So we subconsciously think about it. Also, having your phone in your peripheral vision, your subconscious thinks about social media and the email. So I also say to people, if you're working on something, just put your phone in your desk. Don't even have it on your desk because it'll distract you, even if it's lying face down. So yeah, if you and give yourself time on social media. So set an alarm, 30 minutes. Just say that's all I'm doing. Then I'm done. Then I'm working. So it's kind of habit, discipline, practice.
Is it possible for some people to just not be able to regulate, like where they have to just go cold turkey?
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's different. It's like any other addiction or habit. We all have different ways of coping with it. But some people, say, for example, getting over alcoholism, they have to go cold turkey. Other people can wean themselves off. It just all depends.
So, and you said it affects your self-esteem and your stress and anxiety. How does that work?
So self-esteem, they've shown, the research shows that if you are looking at your own social media page, it actually increases your self-esteem because we've got not so good memories.
Right.
It's bad English, but our memories aren't fantastic in remembering historically what we've been through. But if you're looking through a social media stream, you kind of go, oh, gee, I remember that. I've got awesome friends. I remember that day. Oh, yeah, actually, I've got quite a good life. So it helps to remind you of what a good life you actually do have. Okay. But if you're looking at someone else's social media stream, what you're seeing is their ideal self that they've posted up and all their best life now. And you immediately compare yourself to them while forgetting your best life now.
Yeah.
So you're kind of saying, actually, they've got a much better life than me. I can't, I am completely rubbish and your self-esteem goes down. So my advice is don't look at anyone else's feed. Just look at your own.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting because there are two things that I've seen. So I know some people who never post.
Yeah.
They only look at other people's stuff. So even if they went and looked at their own thing, there would be like not much there.
No.
And so you're obviously getting this high concentration of highlights. And so if you've got 500 friends and they all live a crap life, but they make one post a year, you're going to have one post a day from like each of your friends. And it's going to look like everyone's living a better life than you. Everyone's in bloody Greece all the time. In and then, but the other side is, which interests me, is there are a lot of people who I know who are not like, wouldn't seem that happy and that excited about their lives. But then on social media, it looks like they're living this amazing life. So they're almost like manufacturing highlights, like selfie. Okay, put the filter on, change the lighting. It was amazing. It takes a party from like a 5.5 to a 9. What's that about? Why do people do that?
It's the ideal self. It's because there's social identity theory is actual self, ought self, and ideal self. So actual self is what we really live. Ought self is what other people expect, the life other people expect us to live. So our parents want us to be accountants, lawyers, and architects, and I want to be a florist, but I'd be an accountant, lawyer, and architect because my parents want me to. That's the ought self. The ideal self is who I want to become, is my ideal life. And that's what we post on social media. But often people use filters to kind of ramp that up because actually everyone's posting the ideal self. So I have to one up everyone else and be better than the Joneses. But it does actually lead to body dysmorphia and facial dysmorphia.
That's what I was wondering when you were going to drop the bad side of it. So
and especially in China, there's been a huge uptake in facial surgery and body surgery of just trying to become like my avatar, because actually my avatar is much better looking than me in real life and the person I see in the mirror. So I want to become like that. And a lot of people are going for surgical procedures to try and become the avatar.
Yeah, Victoria actually spoke about that in I don't know if she spoke about in emotional eating, but definitely in her other program she runs with us called the Eat Psych or Eating Psychology Transformation Program.
Yeah,
it's called selfie dysmorphia, I think, where it's that, like, I promise you, I like never want my daughter to see a cell phone. It's like you can have like a green screen Nokia 5110 and that is it, and I'll give you lots of SMSs.
Exactly.
That is insane. Okay, So and so how does it make people anxious? Because you can get depressed if you're watching everyone else's highlights. I understand giving yourself looking at your life. There's a thing on Google called ego googling, where it's when you Google your own name and then you see what comes up. Like depending on how active you're on the internet, that can boost your ego too. But what how does it cause anxiety?
There's some really interesting research, and I can't remember the name of the researcher off the top of my head, but they've looked at it's also part of the addiction stuff, and what they've found is that the middle part of our brain, called the mohawk part of the brain, is activated when you're bored, and it's that part of the brain which is intrinsically important in self-reflection. And self-reflection is intrinsically important in reducing anxiety and stress. When we're constantly distracted, when we stand in a queue waiting for a friend, we're on a mobile, and we never give ourselves time to be bored. So we never give ourselves time to self-reflect, which means that we don't figure our own stuff out, which leads us to be constantly anxious about everything. So actually I talk to people about permission to be bored, because we don't give ourselves permission to be bored, and our society doesn't either, because we constantly have to be always on, always available for work, for home, for friends, for WhatsApp groups. It's just constantly being there. And when we don't reply really quickly, people kind of start thinking, well, where are you? Why haven't you replied? What's going on? Do you not like me anymore? Yeah. So we kind of expect, the social expectation is that you always have your phone in front of your face. But because of that, we've lost touch with ourselves. And we also lose touch with each other, which means our communities are starting to degenerate, because we think we've got all these friends, but they're not really friends. They're just associates.
Yeah.
And we don't have these deep relationships anymore.
Yeah. So do you know what the requirements are to form real connection?
Put your phone away.
Yeah, and then see what happens.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I try and practice all the time really is one day a week I leave my phone off. And it's only a Sunday, because that's a really good day to just not be available. And then I go out and do stuff. And I start connecting and grounding myself, or started connecting and grounding myself in the local community, and started making real friends with real faces around me. It was when I realized that there was not many people who I could call up at 2 o'clock in the morning if everything went pitong, that I realized that actually someone out in China or in Timbuktu who I'm friends with, really good friends with, they won't be there for me. Or even someone down the road who I hardly see, they won't be there for me, because although they're great friends on Facebook, they're not great friends.
Yeah.
So part of that is about just putting your phone away and getting back to life.
Yeah, I've actually had that experience where, like, especially when banting was a big deal in 2014 in South Africa, like lots of activity on social media, lots of people liking posts and commenting and stuff. And you get this illusion that you have lots of friends, and then go out and you see some of the people who like all your stuff. And they're like, hey, and then literally 3 minutes into the conversation, it's dead. There's nothing there. And you're like, oh, wow. Like, I have a lot fewer friends than I thought. Like, That's not actually a real friend. That's amazing. Yeah. So I suppose that leads into the FOMO thing you were talking about. Now, there are a couple of big words here. I'm going to try and pronounce this one. You spoke about the disinhibition effect. I'm so excited to hear about disinhibition.
Okay, so that was originally created by, or thought up by, a guy called John Suler, who's one of the kind of godfathers of cyber psychology. And the whole concept is about when we go online and when we've got a screen in front of us, all our natural inhibitions just go away. So, for example, if someone walked up to you in the street and said, can I have your phone number, your email address, and your postcode, or your physical address, you'd go, no, bro, not a chance. But we'll happily give away all those details online to people we don't know. We don't even know if the site's completely real, but we'll give that stuff away. And we'll happily post stuff on social media that's really personal information that anyone can harvest and use our details to hack into our accounts. We post our holiday photos on social media. And if someone was tracking us and knew where we lived, and we said, oh, hey, we're in Zambia on holiday, and they go, excellent, your house is empty. Let's go in, no one will disturb us. So we never think about all those things online that we automatically think about, like stranger danger in a real world. And that's the disinhibition effect. We become completely disinhibited in terms of our engagement with strangers and things that we wouldn't normally in real life engage with. So that's the disinhibition effect, and it's we just completely change when we are online to what we are in real life.
So where is most of the research happening there? Like in are there specific areas? I imagine like online dating is probably a place where people behave very differently to how they would in real life.
Yeah, well, it's across the board. It's online dating, it's social media, it's in gaming, it's in cybersecurity, it's in everything. Even, or especially in cybersecurity, when we get emails from people who we think, or emails we think are coming from an internal source, and if we're not checking it properly, we just kind of click on a scam email. But actually, if someone walked up to us in the streets and said, you know what, I work for the same company as you, you'd go, prove it.
Yeah.
But we don't online. So it's across everything, not just on dating. It's just what we do as humans.
Like if someone told you just inherited 1.7 million pounds, you just need to pay this deposit. And Uncle Sam 777@gmail.com will pay it to you straight away.
Exactly. And we just buy into it. And we all stand in some way or another. We just don't think about it online.
Yeah, that is crazy. So can we talk about work and boundary blurring and work tech at night? So work tech at night, like I have experienced this where people just text you anytime, coaching clients, even real meal clients, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and they're like urgent. Like, what is that? Okay, so tell us about the academic side of this and the psychology there.
Okay, so we have, since actually it was 2000 when the BlackBerry came on board, and we went from being connected on our desktop to mobile internet. When we suddenly went from, or what BlackBerry did is it gave us efficiencies in communication and made us much better at our job. But that soon translated into being always on and always available, from the perspective that if you weren't replying all the time, then you weren't an efficient worker and you weren't an ideal worker. And we've then translated that one step further into our private lives, in that we now have to always be available for people. And because we accept that in the workplace, you'll happily read your emails at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night and accept text messages from your boss and colleagues at 9, 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, that actually that's normal. And we normalize that across every area of our life. So now it's okay to text someone at 10 o'clock at night, even though before, when we had landlines, it was unacceptable to phone someone after 8 p.m. Now it's okay because I can, and because that's just what we do. We're the modern consumer and the ideal worker, and we just always online. But part of that is that we perpetuate it by replying, and we perpetuate it by not putting those boundaries in place. And when it comes to work, what we kind of going back to the ideal worker mindset is that employers expect you to just work whenever, and they'll happily take your work free. If you're going to work 10 hours more than you really need to, that's no problem. Feel free, because actually we're getting profit from that and you're getting nothing. So they won't always say to you, do you know what, Jonno, you need to actually put your laptop down at 6 o'clock at night. You need to stop working, because now otherwise we're going to have to pay you for this. Or that's not part of your contract. You need to stop and you need to have a family life. But as the ideal workers, we've kind of taken that on board and personalized it to, this is what I do. And what that does is, in the home environment, it means that your children are seeing this as work is more important than them. Your spouse is seeing that as well. And you're seeing that too, that work is more important than your family time. And it's the greatest level or greatest trigger of family conflict is engaging with the office after hours across the board. And it causes huge levels of stress and anxiety in children. And it also sets behavioral expectations that it's okay when you're with your family to actually be online, because actually, do you know what, this is important, this is work, and it's okay to scroll. But what your children are seeing in that whole process is, my father does it, my mother does it, therefore it's okay for me to do it. And when I grow up, because I always want to be an adult, is I will go at 10, 12, as soon as I've got a mobile phone, go into my bedroom, because this is what we do as a family. We look at our phone and connect with others after hours, rather than be fully present as a family in one room. So I'm kind of forgotten your question, but basically the whole thing now is that, also we layer our technology, and we've got our, especially at night, we're checking work emails and we check personal emails and messages, and we put it all onto one phone. So we'll upload work stuff onto our personal phone, and then it'll just all come in. And we don't have that option of, no, this is work, we're putting it away, this is personal, we're keeping it there. It just all gets mixed up into this craziness of licorice all sort to me. And it's exhausting. We don't give our minds the time to relax and regenerate, and we don't give ourselves physically, our bodies, time to regenerate. So it means that we don't sleep well, and the next day we're unproductive, and we've got more work to do, and therefore we should check our emails late into night, and then we don't sleep. So it's a downward spiral of stress, anxiety, work pressure, family not seeing you present, stress in the home, anxious children.
That doesn't sound great for anyone. No.
So
that's interesting. I think there's a guy who I follow called Ryan Holiday, and he talks about his one book is called Stillness is the Key. And then recently a guy called Johan Hari's just come out with a book. He's the Stolen Focus one. Have you read Stolen Focus?
I read it, as soon as it came out, I read it.
Can't wait to read it. And they both, well, I mean, I've read a few articles and watched a couple of talks from Johan Hari, but where was I going with this?
Being silent.
So being silent is the thing that terrifies people the most. That's the thing. So it's like we're all distracted, but it's actually the counter that really scares us. So that's all scary, children, being bad, but like, what would we do if we were with our own thoughts? And it takes me back to an argument that I had with my family when I stopped drinking. And they gave me so much shit about it. Like, I just got such a backlash. I was like, I'm trying to make my life better. And everyone had so much to say. And the thing that everyone said is, they were almost defending themselves, saying, well, when I get home from work, I like to blow off steam and have a glass of wine. And my argument was like, if you have a glass of wine, you actually make yourself dumber. You like slow the brain down. And then you can't unpack anything. You basically put your brain on pause. You don't process. And then you wake up in the morning, and usually it's not just one glass. And you wake up in the morning, you feel like worse, and you haven't processed anything, so it compounds. So can you imagine adding that? So you have the glass of wine, and then you do the screen time, and you care less about everyone's focus when you've had the glass of wine anyway. Just thinking of it all like compounding. And you wake up in the morning, you're hungover, you got like a screen hangover, a wine hangover, you've done nothing, you haven't processed, you haven't connected. Sounds awful. It's like a terrible way to live anyway. And that's the way like most of the world's living right now. Oh my God. So what are you going to do about it, Carolyn?
Well, the great thing that I've found in talking to people is, as soon as they're aware of it and they kind of have to think about it, then they process their own stuff. And it's similar to the emotional eating thing. Once you're aware of something and understand why, then you kind of go, oh, okay, now I'm empowered to do something about it, because we take on technology without thinking about the consequences of it. So there's this new phone, there's a new watch, there's a new VR headset. I'm going to buy it because it's cool and because everyone's talking about it, and oh, look at those awesome games. But we don't think about the tools that we need to manage that and what impact it does have on us. It just happens. The habit builds up quickly over time. And when people stop and think about it, they go, oh, actually, I haven't spent time with my family. Actually, I'm exhausted. Actually, I'm not able to focus. Actually, my job is crap because I can't do it because I'm not actually focusing on it, and I don't spend time recovering, and I'm stressed about my family because I just spend all my time staring at my screen all the time. So it's kind of sitting back and going, oh, okay, I need to do something about this.
So the last thing I wanted to chat about before I set you free is the metaverse. Now, I have this feeling that South Africa has no idea what the metaverse is. I don't even know. I know it's like kind of the internet phase 4 or whatever. And my understanding is that you need to wear one of these like Oculus thingies, and at some point you're going to have gloves that signal your hand gestures, but that is literally it. And now I've already heard that they're selling, you can buy like an Armani shirt or something for your fake person on the marketplace. And it sounds like why on earth would anyone want to plug themselves deeper in?
Yeah. They're developing what they call metahumans rather than avatars.
Right. Okay.
So it's basically a 3D version of you that operates in this metaverse. And now the metaverse is more augmented reality. Well, there is virtual reality side of it as well, but there's from a business perspective, it's more augmented reality. Now the metaverse isn't like the internet as in it's one thing. It's a number of people or number of companies are creating their own version of a metaverse. So the American security forces are creating their metaverse. Meta / the old Facebook is creating a metaverse. Microsoft are creating a metaverse. So there's almost like different metaverses at the moment. It's an arms race towards having the metaverse that everyone's going to buy into, kind of like what search engines were before Google became the main operating system for searching for stuff.
Got it.
But and no one really knows exactly what it's going to look like. There's a lot of guesswork, and there's a lot of, well, we think this. And there has been quite a lot of stuff done in a metaverse type environment. So gamers know exactly what metaverse may look like because they operate in a kind of metaverse environment where they're online multiplayer games.
Like that Steven Spielberg movie, Ready Player One.
Yes.
That's like a metaverse. Okay.
It is like that, but it's going to be that on steroids.
That was terrifying because I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to end up.
Yeah. It is that on steroids. And from a work perspective, it's going to be about engaging with others with an AR headset on that you've got, like with Star Wars, when everyone's in the room and there's kind of some holograms of people and other real people. It's going to be similar to that, but you can also create projects in 3D within the room that everyone, no matter where they're in the world, can engage with and interact with and see. So it's going to have some really massive advantages for remote working and international collaboration, but there's always a dark side, and that scares me more than any dark internet does currently, because I heard a statistic once that 80% of internet use is on the dark web. We only really as consumers know about 20% of what goes on in the massive worldwide internet, which is actually quite scary because that's where all the thieves and naughty people operate. Some of that is behind is what goes on behind firewalls. Some of that's what goes on in China and Russia, but there's a large portion of that which is really the scary bit where all dodgy people operate.
So Russia, so like if it happens in China, because we don't know what it is, they just add that into the dark web. They're like, well,
it's stuff we can't see.
Those 3 billion, they were like disqualified from the light web, so they are just in the dark web. Okay.
Yeah, we're from the Western light web, pretty much. What we refer to. Yeah, we're in the lights. Everyone else is in the dark. So the metaverse, there's more than likely going to be a huge amount that we never operate in. But even now, there's properties being sold in the metaverse. They're going for like £200,000, and land that's being sold. And I know.
You mean like in a space that is infinite?
Yeah,
they're selling real estate
and cold hard cash, exactly that, and clothing. And they're doing. There's already been a concert done in the metaverse. I think I can't remember exactly who it was, but you kind of pitch up on your VR glasses and you watch a whole concert in VR.
That's quite cool.
Yeah,
like that seems cool.
Yeah. And so there's going to be some really awesome stuff, but it's the thing is that when we are in VR, there's a concept called presence, which actually you basically forget you exist in the real world. Wow. Because your brain thinks that you're living in this Ready Player One environment.
Yes.
And I do soft skills training in VR, and I do 4 hours of soft skills training and forget I'm sitting in my office here with my dog at my feet, and I can come out of VR and go, oh, I haven't been. I'm actually at home. I just completely forget, and you become fully immersed in this world, and with all the gamers. All the gaming that goes on, it really worries me that people are going to lose touch with the real world, and even being called metahumans worries me because there's a lot of psychological stuff around that that's just a bit frightening.
Okay. Yeah. If we go any deeper, my lid's gonna blow off, I'm afraid. Like, oh God.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, I think the
That's
thing
kind of what most
the
people do. Like, what?
yeah, I suppose that what scares me about it is obviously, there's going to be this whole economy in there. And I remember when people were talking about advertising and then adverts came on Facebook, I was like, this is dirty. This is where I hang out with my friends. And now there's this thing.
Yeah.
And like, I think half the world's trying to get unplugged. But like the VR thing you're talking about, it seems like a natural progression, because I think Mark Zuckerberg in a podcast I was watching, he was saying that you can actually get to a point where he was kind of trying to make an excuse for Facebook, and this is streaming onto Facebook, so there's a lot of irony in this. It's not lost on me, but he wants to make the world more connected, right? And the irony is that like the world's never been this disconnected. It's like terrifying. And he was saying that actually the things that assist connection are which you don't get in the current metaverse, are things like when you're on a Zoom call, everyone has the same volume, whereas in a VR call it would pick up spatial differences. So you could be sitting next to someone and whisper something, but then like the person at the other end of the table would have to project their voice, so it would feel more real. And then also with hand gestures, that makes a difference. He also said that you can't make eye contact in a Zoom call, for instance, like this. Like I'm looking at the combination of you, me, and my camera to try and like mix it up.
Yeah.
So you don't ever connect properly. And then, but in VR you would be able to. So do you think? I mean, he's obviously like selling the stuff, but like, do you think that it's possible that we might become more connected, even if we spend more time in the not verse, like the
Well, I think he wants the world to be more connected, because then he can flog more advertising and get more money. That's I think his overall aim. But those connections are superficial. And the thing with VR is it does. If we do training across a number of time zones at once, and people often, every single time they said they feel like they've spent the day with their colleagues, even though the only thing you're looking at is an avatar of the person and their voice. And that's the whole thing with presence. You feel like you're physically there with others. So you don't have to look in their eyes. You feel like you're there, in even space. So if an avatar came and stood next to my avatar, I'm like, oh, dude, you're in my space. It's virtual, but I feel like they're encroaching on me. So I suspect that that's what he's talking about when he's talking about greater connections or level of connections, because it's an emotional bond you have within the VR environment, because you're not distracted by anything else that's going on, because you're fully immersed. You can't see anything else. This is where you are. So there is a much stronger connection than you would have when you're sitting across a table, because there's lots of other people distracting you, things going on, other conversations, someone walking past the coffee shop. So you're not as fully present in a live interaction as you are in VR, but it's still not real. And he's trying to flog the realness of it, or the I don't know, it's kind of like full-blown sugar injection, rather than just eating a bit of cake with a bit of sugar in. It's full-blown sugar addiction of VR experience, limited connection, but it's still not real. It's completely not.
I think the big question is there a difference between, is there a difference to your brain and your biology? If you say, for instance, it was photorealistic, would there be a difference in terms of like, would there be one that makes you happy and the other that makes you depressed? Or would there be like, is there a point where you get there be no downside, apart from the fact you can't touch each other, and not in like a sexy way, just like you can't high five or whatever?
You can.
Okay, that's creepy.
When you've got your controller, if you can shake hands with someone, your controller vibrates. So you actually feel like you're shaking hands with them. Right. But that's before you even go to the gloves. That's just a kind of normal controller. And you can high five them, and there's a clap, and you hear the clap, and you feel the shake in your hands. So you actually feel like you physically engage with someone. And that was really huge during the pandemic, because people felt like they can actually touch each other in VR when they couldn't in real life. So there was some upsides to it. Yeah. But there's just a whole bunch of downsides.
Okay. So then the final thing is like, how big is VR at the moment? How many oculi? It's an Oculus. That's the device. It was
Oculus,
Quest 2. How many people are using it at the moment?
I can't answer that because I don't know. But Facebook is not the only VR headset distributor, and I know that Apple are coming into the market as well. But there are millions and millions and millions, and it's mostly gamers who play with VR, because VR is kind of quite a scary place if you haven't tried it. It just sounds really surreal and weird, but it's really easy to get into once you put a headset on. It's just like a fun game, and it's easy to get addicted to it. So, but it's now become affordable for general consumers. So it's like £300-400 for a headset, whereas before it was £1,000, multiplied by 20. And then but Microsoft have an AR headset, which is like £1,000 minimum. I think it's about £2,000, something ridiculous. But I know that there's some smart glasses that are being developed in China that are like £120-200, but that's basically AR glasses, so you can see things similar to what you would with the Microsoft AR headset. So you can see the real world, and it's like a screen in front of you that's projecting images, and it's got a camera out that's looking at everything else you're doing. So that's going to become affordable, and it's just really more people need to buy it so that they've got money to actually start building apps. And once they start building apps, more people buy it because it's fun and cool and trendy, and then it won't be long before we'll all be wearing AR glasses and digital phones.
I'll have to rent an office in the metaverse so that you can visit the cubicle I've rented for the next interview, basically.
Pretty much.
And then we'll have to buy some clothes, buy some fake, not like clothes that don't exist.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, Carolyn, that was amazing. Much more than I bargained for when we were having a little emotional eating discussion. But I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom.
Welcome.
It's been amazing.
You're very welcome.
And all the best with all of that.
Now that's blowing your mind, you might just need to go lie down for a while and just work through this.
I'm just going to leave my phone in my office and just going to go into the forest for a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Have a lovely day.
Okay.